Everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're coming at you with our week one recap, fantasy football takeaways for every single game. Just got done watching the Monday Night Football game. 49ers look dominant as always. And let's just get right into this thing. Let's get into our stud and most importantly, goofs of the week. There was a lot of goofs of the week this week. It was kind of a weird week, a lot of dud performances. So I wanted to just get it out of the way in the intro. I want to read off all of our goof of the weeks. We had Dalton Kincaid scoring 2.1 points, Mark Andrews 3.4, Drake London 3.5, Marvin Harrison 1.4, Caleb Williams 7.2, Mostert 3.9, McLaurin 3.7, Olave 3.1, Deontay Johnson 3.9, Javonte Williams 3.3. What happened this week? That's a lot of people in your starting lineups, a lot of people that are being started. Who are you most worried about, Stores, and how are you?
I'm doing good. That's kind of a lot to take in right there. There was a lot of goofballs this week, and I mean, there's even more. I mean, you could go on for another probably 10, 20 players that just, underperformed their fantasy expectations, by a lot. But, from the side of things that football's back, got to watch NFL Red Zone on Sunday, got to watch my favorite team play. That was fantastic. Bolt up, baby. Justin Herbert, Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, new era. Doing good on that side of things. From a fantasy aspect of things, not so good. It was a rough week. A lot of underperforming players. It is week one. Maybe I might want to panic on some people. I am a little bit nervous on Marvin Harrison Jr. That performance was just abysmal. Kyler Murray was incredible in the first quarter, then just went, I don't even know, he just disappeared. But yeah, a lot to get into. I'm doing good. I'm excited, to talk fantasy football and football. It's the best time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not too worried about like Marvin Harrison Jr. It was his first career game, but let's get into this first game, the Ravens versus Chiefs Thursday Night Football, because someone I am worried about is Mark Andrews. I mean, we'll get into our stud of the week. I think it's pretty easy to say our stud of the week is Isaiah Likely, who had 9 catches, 111 yards, a touchdown, and 12 targets, almost had the game tying to go into overtime touchdown as well, just by inches. So I do want to say Isaiah Likely does scare me for Mark Andrews owners. I would be panicking a little bit. I would be throwing like 60% of my fab at Isaiah Likely because, even if regresses a little bit, he's still a big part of their offense. He might be the wide receiver two, wide receiver one in this offense. And I know the Ravens won't be chasing every single game, but Isaiah Likely does look like, that guy. He has a really nice connection with Lamar Jackson. So I am pretty scared if I'm a Mark Andrews owner. You're not like benching him or even dropping him at this point, but you're just really on alert, scared about that. Going into like the rushing game. I think Derrick Henry, he's fine because they're not always going to be chasing games. They're not always going to be down. They're going to be actually up in a lot of games. So they'll just kind of run the ball out, in the second half. So I'm not too worried about Derrick Henry. This is probably a floor game for him. So as long as he gets a touchdown, you're good. But Justice Hill, he's kind of a baller in the receiving game. 8 targets, 6 catches, 52 yards. He's in every third down, every 2 minute drill. So Justice Hill's someone to keep an eye on. He should definitely be rostered. Um, Anything else you want to take away on the Ravens?
On the Ravens side of things, like you just said it perfectly. Mark Andrews is very worrisome right now. I don't know if it was the game plan, the scheme for this game, but it did look like Isaiah Likely was dominant. He was getting open, and it looks like he should be a big part of this offense. He absolutely balled out. I mean, he would have had 2 touchdowns and another catch if it wasn't for his shoe size being a half size too big. I mean, it was just so brutal the way they lost that game. And then just goes on to move on to the Chiefs and, the overall game. It's like you cannot make any mistakes against the Chiefs because they will capitalize on it every single time. And they don't make mistakes. The Chiefs are the biggest team, in the NFL when it comes to not turning over the ball, capitalizing on your mistakes. They take full advantage of that. And it was so close, but it just came down to the team that made less mistakes here. And that's why the Chiefs ultimately ended up winning. And on their side of the ball, I mean, Rashee Rice, me and you were very high on him. We told you guys to draft him. He is the true alpha. He's gonna be the leading target share. I think he takes over Travis Kelce for the lead, for their number one wide receiver in this offense, for the guy who's going to get the most receptions. So if you got Isaiah Likely, good for you. He's going to be a stud. Isaiah Pacheco had a pretty solid game, 15 carries, 45 yards, and he got in the end zone. From a receiving side, 3 targets, 2 for 33, not great. Travis Kelsey, also, goof of the week. Are you panicking on Travis Kelsey? Let me know with that.
I never really wanted to draft Travis Kelsey in the first place just because I had him last year and this team doesn't really need to use him, which is why I don't love him or Mahomes both in fantasy, just because they can really just run games out with Pacheco and still win easily. Like the Chiefs are just the Chiefs every single year. They can just win easily, even against these great teams. They can just throw slants to Rashi Rice and run it to Pacheco and they'll be just fine. So I like Pacheco and Rice a lot more than those two players in fantasy. Obviously, you can't really bench Travis Kelsey, but yeah, I was never really drafting or targeting him or Mahomes just because of I don't really see the high upside and the week to week upside with those two. But Xavier Worthy, 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, very electric too. Or I guess one was a rush, so 3 touches, 2 touchdowns. He's just a very electric player. He's so fast. You can tell he's easily the fastest player on the field every time he touches it. So that's a fun addition. Would you start as Xavier Worthy like this week or?
You know, that's tough because I can see Xavier Worthy almost having like a big splash play every single game because Andy Reid will, drum up something that's going to get him involved, get him into open space. So I think he's a safe, in a dual flex league, I think he's a good flex option. I'm not starting him as my wide receiver one or wide receiver two, but in a dual flex league, depending what you're in, I think he could actually be very, very solid.
Yeah, said it perfectly. Totally fine starting him in a 2 flex league, especially considering the upside he can have those big boom weeks, just like he did in his first career game. And there was a lot of rookies that really struggled in their first career game this week. So I think we covered everything well. I'm not really targeting anyone on the waivers that we haven't talked about. Obviously, likely you're throwing money at Justice Hill, someone that should be rostered. P Ryan in like a deep, deep league, he could be someone to roster, but that is about it for me.
Yeah, I think 100%. And I think, going in this week, I think it is Isaiah Likely who is going to be one of the most available players where you should. I mean, I think, if you're doing your fab bucks, I think you do need to throw quite a bit on Isaiah Likely because, if he is the, alpha receiver of this offense and he's getting, 12 targets or even, for that 8, it looks like he's going to be involved in the red zone. He's going to be involved with getting, you know, he's going to be on the field no matter what, even with Mark Andrews and running routes. So I think he could be a very, very valuable asset that you probably should be your number one target this week.
Yeah, Isaiah likely will be the number one target in waiver wire pickups this week. So definitely put a claim in for him, especially if you don't have one of those top tight ends. Tight ends are very hard to come by. Tight ends had a disastrous week this week, as we saw. So we'll move on to the next game, the Friday night football game, the Packers versus Eagles in Brazil. The Eagles come out on top. I was surprised by this outcome. Jordan Love was really just not on the same page with his receivers, and obviously he goes down, which is heartbreaking. Shouldn't be too serious though. Should just be a 2 to 6 week injury, hopefully closer to the 2 week side. But yeah, shout out to the Eagles. Shout out to Saquon Barkley. 24 for 109, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Just a beautiful, beautiful performance. He had a great receiving touchdown as well. So 3 total touchdowns for Saquon, a fantasy game winning week, really, for him. AJ Brown blows up 5 catches, 119 and a touchdown on Jair Alexander as well. Devontae Smith had 8 targets. So he's very, exciting and usable in fantasy as well. This Eagles offense is looking really nice with Kellen Moore. Jalen Hurts started really rough with the 2 picks, but then he picked it up and got you a pretty nice fantasy week as well. So you're pretty happy about the Eagles, honestly. And then for the Packers, you just had Jaden Reed, 4 catches, 138 and a touchdown. He had an electric performance with the one rush for 33 yards and a touchdown as well. So he is just electric. I don't even think you need to bench him with Malik Willis out there just because he's going to be the guy that they have to get it going with. They have to just feed him, and he's their only hope to beat the Colts this week. So I do like Jaden Reed. I'm not like trying to start him, but if you have to, I don't mind it. And then yeah, it sucks that Jordan Love goes down, but pretty great game.
I mean, stud of the week of this game, Saquon Barkley, who sadly I played in fantasy football. And it was meant to be. It was a great game from Saquon Barkley. He's finally behind a competent offensive line, and he just looked fantastic out there, man. I mean, he looked like one of the best running backs in the NFL. He looked like his rookie season self. So it was fun to see him just really balling out, behind a good team, behind a good offensive line. And he just ate. And of course, AJ Brown. It's gonna be AJ Brown. He's gonna get that long touchdown. He's gonna be that dude. So you're very happy from an Eagles standpoint of things. You travel to Brazil, you get a tough, gritty win over the Packers, who are really, really good. And yeah, for the Packers, 0-1, brutal start. You lose Jordan Love. I know it's only for hopefully it's just the minimum 2, 3 weeks. Hopefully he can get back out there soon. But it is just a devastating loss, and it's gonna put you behind for the start of the season because Malik Willis is pretty rough. I think he can go out there and I think he can be okay, but I don't trust Malik Willis to go win you 2 games if he needs you to. I think you'll be lucky to get 1 win under Malik Willis. But like you said, from a fantasy aspect of things, I think you're forced to start Josh Jacobs because running backs are hard to, you drafted Josh Jacobs high, you got to put him in. He should be the focal point of this offense now, where they're going to be a heavy run first team with Malik Willis. And like you said, Jaden Reed, he's just an all around weapon. They're going to figure out a way to get him creative, end around, screens. He's just a good football player, and he's by far the wide receiver one in this offense. So I have no problem starting Jaden Reed even with Malik Willis.
Yeah, and then Dontavion Wicks, I am dropping. He had 3 targets and some bad drops, 0 catches. It was just no connection with Love. Ended the season greatly last year, and it was, fine drafting him. But after seeing last week, I'm dropping him and throwing a dart at someone else, honestly. And yeah, like I said, for the Eagles, really no takeaways at all. You're just excited about all those stars on the Eagles. No really pickups that emerged or anything. And for the Packers, Tucker Kraft definitely outproduced Luke Musgrave. He is the tight end that you want in this room. I love Tucker Kraft. Loved him coming out of college. Any other takeaways in this one?
You know, hang in there, Packers fans. That's all. It's not really a takeaway. Just, hang in there. You had a pretty rough start to your season last year, and then you had an incredible resurgence. So I wouldn't get too down in the dumps if you're Packers fans. You still got a really good team. It's very promising. You played a really good Eagles team, very well rounded Eagles team with probably the best, star studded weapons in the NFL with AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley. So it was a good game, man. It was just a really good game. Tough outcome though, just watching Jordan Love go down. You just hate to see that.
Yeah, thankfully Jordan Love will be back, sooner rather than later. And last takeaways, the Eagles defense actually looked really solid there with Vic Fangio. So you do love to see that always. Vic Fangio definitely brightens things up here and gives them a fresher look. So with that, let's go on to the next game. I'm trying to decide what game I want to do next. Let's go to the Cardinals and Bills game. That was a really, really fun game to watch. The Bills kind of came back there at the end, and Josh Allen just put up some fantasy points. He got the 2 rushing touchdowns, the 2 passing touchdowns. He just does this every week in fantasy. This is why he's always been the QB1 in fantasy. And yeah, he's just that guy. It was good to see Keon Coleman is their wide receiver one. So that's pretty fun. A nice rookie with some high upside. Khalil Shakir is definitely that second guy. Curtis Samuel, you can tell he's a little bit injured. So I'm not like too worried about Curtis Samuel, but I would probably drop him until he gets healthy. The big thing here is Dalton Kincaid, 1 catch for 11 yards on 2 targets. That's scary. I'm not fully panicking. All tight ends were terrible, but it is kind of weird that the Bills were down. They had to kind of come back, and they were throwing the ball a lot. And Kincaid only had 1 catch, so it does confuse me. It scares me. I have him in a few leagues. I really liked Kincaid's value this year, but that is very interesting to me. Do you have any takeaways? Are you not too worried about that, or?
Yeah, no, we saw the connection last year. We saw it really stem and grow. So, like I said, week one it is hard to judge. And as my great coach Jim Harbaugh said, he said week one to week two is where you can make the most progression. This is the most pivotal week on how your season goes and how much progress you can make going forward. And so I think week one is just a really good way to evaluate your team, see where you're at, and really see how you need to get better. And so I'm not worried about Dalton Kincaid. We saw enough last year. It was a fluky game. It was a weird game overall. I mean, Josh Allen, really took over. I was obviously have a lot of stake in the Cardinals. I have Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. stack. And at the beginning, man, it was looking really good. I mean, Kyler was 15 of 16 in the first quarter, and he had a touchdown. He should have had two. They gave it to James Conner at the one, though. Shout out James Conner. He had a really good game. Um, I think he's going to pay off his fantasy value substantially well, getting involved through the air and on the ground. He's going to take those, those short 1 yard touches. So he should be a solid running back all year long. But Kyler Murray, man, I mean, 15 of 16 in the first quarter, a touchdown. He was nearly flawless. And then he only completed 6 passes from the second quarter to the end of the game. So, and they hung in this game somehow. I mean, obviously, they were the first ones with the new dynamic kickoff. DJ Dallas, shout out DJ Dallas, had the first ever dynamic kickoff house call. That was pretty exciting to watch. But I don't know what happened. The Cardinals were looking so solid, and then it just, I don't know, their offense couldn't get anything clicking. The Bills just absolutely flipped the game script, and Josh Allen just played Superman. And oh my God, he was incredible. I mean, from the ground, from 9 rushes for 39 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the ground, and then 18 of 23 for 232 and two through the air. That is why Josh Allen is one of the most valuable fantasy players. That's why he's the quarterback one every single season. And I am kicking myself a little bit in the foot for I was drafting him in a lot of mock drafts, but I didn't get any Josh Allen stake this year.
Yeah, it really was looking like the Cardinals were going to win, and then Josh Allen just turned it on. He did it all by himself. He made sure they weren't going to lose that game at home. So, mad respect to Josh Allen. You love to have him in fantasy. You're just, he's the QB1 for like the next 5 years to come, and that's just a lock at this point. So, you love that. James Cook had a solid week, obviously getting involved in the receiving game as well. So, kind of expected with James Cook. Nothing really to change your mind for the Bills. No one I'm really targeting off waivers. I think I'm just kind of
What
moving.
about Greg Dortch, wide receiver one for the Cardinals?
Yeah, Greg Dortch is definitely someone that should be rostered. I don't think that'll be fully sustainable. I do think Marvin starts getting more implemented each week. Will, be heavily implemented more. So I don't know. I think especially like even this week they have a good matchup. So I think Marvin will have a pretty good game. Greg Dortch is just kind of, he'll get you 10 points every now and then. I think he is rosterable. And then like you said,
For the
James.
bench spot. He's for the bench spot to
Yeah.
see. He was, one thing I will say, I don't know how much of the, shout out Dan was at the Broncos Seahawks game in Seattle. I think he was watching Red Zone from the from the stands, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. But if you watched Marvin Harrison Jr., I kind of felt like he was half-assing his routes a little bit. I felt like he got a little discouraged halfway through the game, and he was running half-ass routes. And I mean, he was open up for a game-winning touchdown at the end of the game, and Kyler Murray just missed him. I mean, it was brutal. He was uncovered. He's waving his arms up in the air. He was open. But the effort coming from Marvin Harrison Jr. was a little concerning, but I'm not going to panic. It is week one. Weird stuff did happen. Obviously, look at Dalton Kincaid. I'm really excited for week two, but I mean, it was a disappointing week for a lot of these guys on these teams.
Yeah, he honestly probably did get a little bit discouraged, being so used to being the focal point of an offense his whole college career, high school career, his whole life, really. So that does make a little bit of sense. I do see him improving. I'm not benching him. I'm not panicking yet. Michael Wilson gets the one touchdown, but it is his only catch of the week. So I don't think he's too rosterable right now. You could, hold on to him, but I would probably just rather have Dortch in a PPR league just for the floor at this point. And then yeah, Trey McBride, don't panic. He was, on the top tier of tight ends this week because of how bad tight ends were. And you already mentioned James Conner. He's awesome. He's gonna be a steal. Him and David Montgomery are two of the steals of the drafts. Anything else you want to say on this game? Any other takeaways?
You know, Disappointed in Kyler Murray for having me 14 points in the first quarter and absolutely just debacling my first fantasy game of the season. So, he better bounce back next week or he's gonna get a DM.
He's going to get that bench from stores. You absolutely hate to see it, but yeah, I think Kyler will be fine. He started off great. Hopefully, they can kind of build off of that and finish games stronger. Moving on to the next game, another great game. The Texans went into Indy and beat the Colts 29-27. That throw, that big conversion at the end of the game to Nico Collins, that catch, that throw, it was just beautiful. beautiful stuff, and it exemplifies how good those two players are. That connection is beautiful. It's going to be great for years to come. Nico gets 6 for 117 on 8 targets. He's just an awesome player. CJ Stroud played awesome. Stephon Diggs comes down with 2 catches on only six, or sorry, 2 touchdown catches on only 6 catches and 6 targets. So he definitely was the red zone guy there. And Tank Dell kind of disappointed with for 3 for 40. Joe Mixon, he's kind of the takeaway in this game. 30 carries. That's probably the most that we'll see this whole week. 30 carries for 159 and a touchdown. He also had 3 catches in the air. So you do love to see the usage and volume with Joe Mixon. He's going to be a steal of the draft. He's going to be just a must start going forward, maybe even a trade for target with that usage. And yeah, you love to see it. Everyone really excelling except for Tank Dell. So the Texans looked great. And then Anthony Richardson, he is just a freak. He's a superhuman. That touchdown throw he had on his back foot, just laying it up for Alec Pierce. Beautiful stuff. He can do alien, freaky stuff. Had a touchdown on the ground with 56 rushing yards, 212 yards through the air with 2 touchdowns. He's awesome. He's going to be really fun in fantasy. You just keep starting him as long as he's healthy. Jonathan Taylor, a little bit disappointing. Thankful he got the touchdown, or else it would have kind of been a goof of the week performance. And then Michael Pittman kind of disappointing as well. But Anthony Richardson was a takeaway there.
It was a good game though. I mean, this was a solid game. It was you definitely felt the division rival in this game. It came down to the wire. And I mean, the target share for these three Texans wide receivers is beautiful. I mean, you got 8, 7, and 6, for those top three dogs. As we said, Nico is clearly the top dog. He didn't get in the end zone, but I mean, he was incredible. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 117 yards. He is a freak. He's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. He just that size advantage and everything. I think he'll start getting touchdowns here soon. Stephon Diggs' red zone usage was awesome for those of you who drafted him. It really paid off his value right there. However, I don't expect him to get 2 touchdowns every single week, so I am a little hesitant on him. I think he is a good wide receiver to play. I don't think he should have been your wide receiver one. And Tank Dell, yeah, kind of seems to be I mean, he had 7 targets. I do feel like it will be Nico 1, Stephon 2, Tank Dell really as their 3, in my opinion. But yeah, like you said, Joe Mixon was the storyline, the stud of the week. CJ Stroud did what CJ Stroud needed to do. He's just solid. D'Amico Ryan is just one of the better coaches. But yeah, from a fantasy aspect, you want all the Texans. They're so solid. We wanted every piece of them that we could get. And yeah, Anthony Richardson, a lot of suspect people, a lot of hype around him. But I mean, only completing 9 passes and having 212 yards and 2 touchdowns just shows his freaky upside. I mean, the guy's one of the most athletic, freaky builds you've ever seen in the NFL, and that rushing upside is going to help carry him substantially through the year. As long as he can stay healthy, he's a must start.
Yeah, you just have to start him while he's healthy. You got to ride it. And there's really not too many takeaways in this game because you know that you're starting all the stars on the Texans. I would say I'm getting to the point where I'm benching Dalton Schultz. That was kind of a underwhelming performance. I know tight ends are just very scarce. So if you have to start him in this great offense, I respect it. But there's just so many options in this offense. I think I would rather go and throw a lot of money, a lot of fab at Isaiah Likely. And then for the Colts, the only guy that's really relevant of talking about is AD Mitchell, who only had 1 catch, but there were like 3 missed touchdowns, 3 near touchdowns that were, really close. And as that connection builds on throughout the year, I do see AD Mitchell actually being a pretty solid option in fantasy. So some disappointments for the Colts stars. Anthony Richardson starred, and AD Mitchell's kind of the only takeaway for me. There's no one I'm really targeting on waivers.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, Alec Pierce obviously had a big week, came off of that really, really long, huge, incredible touchdown throw. But yeah, as you said, I don't know how much stock in these receivers I want and trust. I think Michael Pittman, obviously was a clear lead in targets there with 8. I think he will progress. I think he will be, the wide receiver one in this offense. or AD Mitchell. It's between those two, but any of the other receivers, I don't really want any stock in. And Jonathan Taylor, you
I
just
guess
hope.
we're kind of disrespecting Alec Pierce. We should. Are you targeting him at all, or was it kind of a flash in the pan?
I don't know. I don't think Alec Pierce. I think he could be a bench player in deeper leagues. I think you could start him depending on how big it is. But I don't see Alec Pierce. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're really banking on on a long touchdown with Alec Pierce, and rightfully so. He is good. He is a field stretcher. He can get open, and you have the quarterback to do it. But that's just kind of what you're relying on is a big touchdown, to make him fantasy relevant.
Yeah, 100%. That's worded perfectly. I think we kind of came away with all the relevant takeaways there in that
Either
game.
way, so sorry. Just on their stats, Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor were the only ones. They didn't even give one touch to a backup running back.
Yeah, that is a big plus. I think it was like Joe Mixon, Kyron Williams, and Jonathan Taylor that had just pretty much 100% of the backfield. So you do love to see that, even though JT didn't produce too well. Thankfully, he got the touchdown. That is very positive to see that he is 100% of the backfield other than Anthony Richardson. So beautiful stuff there. Let's go on to the next game, a very good, close game. The Steelers went into Atlanta and beat the Falcons. And the biggest takeaway here, Kirk Cousins looks terrible. You had all of Twitter already calling for Michael Penix week one into the season. Just terrible, terrible outing. It looks like the Achilles is really affecting him because he was not getting his power on his throws. He wasn't just he was very inaccurate. His arm looked like a noodle. It was bad. So hopefully he gets healthy fast because it can't be like this. They will put Michael Penix in within a month of the season if it keeps looking like this. I will say Bijan Robinson, this was a complete floor performance from him, and you definitely will take it. No touchdowns, but he still gets 68 on the ground, 5 for 43 in the air. So you will definitely take that as a floor performance. But speaking of floor performances, now that you see Drake London could go 2 for 15 with only 3 targets while being out there for 100% of snaps, that scares me. I didn't think Kirk Cousins could possibly look this bad in a million years, and that does scare me. Drake London needs to be more involved, needs those, PPR catches. He was going in the second round of drafts, so that really does scare me that that's his floor. And then Kyle Pitts, he was the best tight end of the week, just absolutely crazy. He comes down at the touchdown. I guess he was a pretty decent draft pick, which is crazy to say.
If he didn't have that touchdown, it would have been a pretty rough outing. So the touchdown definitely saved him. My kind of takeaway is I don't know, man. It was bad. I mean, I don't feel like the Steelers do have a good defense. Obviously, TJ Watt was an absolute menace. That Falcons line was just terrible. I mean, they had Kirk Cousins shaking in his boots the entire time. He had no confidence back there. He looked scared. He looked like Derek Carr back there. And Derek Carr looked like Mahomes this week. So it's week one, man. It is really weird, but this was not the outcome I expected. I did not expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to kick 10 field goals and beat the Falcons. I didn't expect them to not score a touchdown and still beat the Falcons with Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. This is such an offense that had so much hype around it, and I am a little bit panicked. Bijan Robinson, I'm not panicked on. He was out there for a majority of the snaps. He looked fantastic. And he was very productive, I thought, with most of his runs, most of his receptions. I wish he could have fallen in the end zone, but he looks to be the focal point of this offense. I think he will be. You should sleep well at night having him because he is going to produce and he will fall in the end zone and really just be a stud. But yeah, Drake London, man, I'm scared. I'm scared to just think that he's just maybe not that good of a receiver. I don't know. If I don't know. I am a little bit worried he's supposed to be a breakout candidate. 3 targets, that's all we could get. I mean, it reminded me of Taylor Heineke out there throwing to these guys. So I am worried. On the other side of the ball, George Pickens is a stud. I think we all knew that was coming. He's going to be awesome. I don't think it matters who's playing quarterback, whether it's Justin or Russell Wilson. I think he is obviously a must start, a must play. Najee Harris. I mean, obviously Jalen Warren a little shaken up. Obviously not getting is involved. But I think Najee Harris for now is a good flex play moving forward, till proven otherwise. But weird game, man. Weird game. Shout out TJ Watt, the stud of the week. He single handedly beat this Falcons offense. He was in the backfield on almost 100% of the snaps. I mean, he looked like he was out there playing little kids. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, he definitely had Kirk Cousins seeing go. So shout out to TJ Watt. He does this every single game. Like you said, I would start Najee until we see Jalen Warren get more involved, get more healthy. Najee wasn't great with his touches, but he will get, points. He will get a lot of a workload. He had 20 carries, which is a lot more than a lot of the running backs we saw. And then, yeah, like you said, Kirk Cousins is scary. You never want to see Ray McLeod being or ever getting 7 targets in general with Drake London getting 3. That's just a really interesting situation. At least there's no Arthur Smith. So, Tyler Algier was really not involved at all, which you love to see with Bijan Robinson. But yeah, ultimately, Kirk Cousins, you're not ever starting in fantasy. Kyle Pitts, you can start just because of the scarcity of tight ends. Drake London, you're scared, but you have to start, which sucks. You will give him one more chance, one more week of redemption. Hopefully they can hyper target him. And then yeah, Justin Fields, you kind of do want to start, especially in like a super flex league, just because of the rushing. You do want to start Justin Fields if he's starting, but I think Russ will be starting whenever he is fully healthy. Other takeaways on the Steelers, Pat Fryermuth goes 4 for 27. You can start him. It's not exciting at all. I would throw money for Isaiah Likely if I'm in that territory, but no one really emerged as someone that I'm targeting and picking up. And you mentioned it perfectly. George Pickens, the touchdowns will be hard to come by, but 7 targets, 6 for 85. He comes down with just great catches, acrobatic catches. He's an absolute stud, honestly. So you love George Pickens. He was a great pick. Any other takeaways in this one?
Weird vibes from week one in this game. So I'm expecting things to change a lot for both of these teams come week two, but weird, probably the weirdest game of the week.
It was a week 1 game for sure, to say the least. Kirk Cousins looking like, you know, prime Taylor Heineke, prime Desmond Ritter. And yeah, just a weird game. But let's go on to a really good game, a good week 1 game. The Jaguars went into Miami, lost to the Dolphins 20-17, but the Jags looked really solid. It took a little bit of a comeback effort for the Dolphins, took a heroic Tyreek Hill long touchdown like you can just lock him in to do every single week, especially this week after everything that happened before the game. 7 catches, 130 yards, and 1 touchdown. Tyreek Hill is just an absolute star. He'll do this every week. Take his overs on an underdog every single week. Jalen Waddle gets 100 yards, 5 catches, and 5 targets. He's an absolute stud as well. This whole offense is really electric. Devon Achane was really exciting, 7 for 76 in the air on 7 targets. And then he obviously gets the goal line touchdown, which is very big and very scary, transitioning over to Raheem Mostert, who only gets 9 yards on the ground, only 2 catches. And if he's getting the goal line work stolen from him, he is not startable. So that is something to monitor. You're going to want to bench Mostert if HN is playing. He is a little bit injured. He left the game early, and they do play on Thursday. So definitely monitor that situation, but I'm not starting Mostert at this moment in time. Tua, you can start because he has those 2 freaks, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. No other real takeaways for the Dolphins for me. No one I'm really targeting to add. You already knew what you were getting with the Dolphins offense other than Mostert doing nothing. And then going over to the Jaguars, the surprise is Tank Bigsby having that long run, but getting 12 carries for 73 yards, the same amount of carries as Travis Etienne. They were saying it all offseason, but they said it last offseason too. But they actually gave him the workload. They split it with Travis Etienne. Travis does get the touchdown, which you love to see, but only 2 catches in the air. It's not all positive for Travis. I'm a little bit scared. I'm not benching him. I'm not panicking. I'm not trading him, but I am just a little bit weary and scared that Tank Bigsby will be getting, almost a split in that backfield. Don't love that. And then Brian Thomas Jr., he's my other takeaway. He's an absolute stud. He is startable for me in fantasy. He is just an absolute beast. He already has that chemistry and connection with Trevor. I think sky's the limit for BTJ.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game. It was a really good game, and yeah, I mean, the Jaguars I thought were going to dominate, and all of a sudden, it was just a little bit of Tyreek magic. I mean, the game really flipped when Travis Etienne had that fumble at the 1 yard line, fumbled it into the end zone, recovered by the Dolphins. That's just really where everything flipped, and it just felt kind of disappointing from Travis Etienne. I mean, obviously, if we would have had that touchdown, I think the game and everything would have been completely different. But that just really flipped the script. It flip the feeling on Travis Etienne, so it kinda ended up feeling like a bummer, game when he was just realistically, keeping his keeping the ball in his hands and a half yard away from having a 2 touchdown game and actually looking really solid. But like you said, the takeaway for the Jags is Brian Thomas Jr. is legit. He is really good. He's gonna be the alpha wide receiver one in this offense. I have full faith in that. This is his rookie game. He looked so awesome. Him and Trevor on that touchdown, like you said, was one of the most aesthetically pleasing touchdowns you've ever seen. I mean, it was just a beautiful throw and catch. And then yeah, from the Dolphin side of things, I mean, I hope you guys, once you saw that Tyreek Hill getting arrested news, I hope everyone went and took his overs. We were texting about it in a group chat. Bet every over on Tyreek Hill touchdowns, yards. It doesn't matter. He was going to go off. It was some Scotty Scheffler stuff, and he proved it. I mean, a 7 receptions, 130 yards, a touchdown, a really long touchdown, 80 yards. So, I mean, Tyreek Hill continues to do what Tyreek Hill does. He's the scariest player in the NFL. He'll flip a script. You know, for those of you who were scared to draft Devon Achane, and for those of you who are brave enough to do it, congratulations to the ones who were brave enough. If you drafted him, you were wanting to win your fantasy football league. You wanted to win your fantasy football league, and I kicked myself in the foot because it was so obvious. I mean, this guy last year, if you watched him, he was literally the greatest running back of all time. Obviously, he didn't show that on the ground this week, but he is going to get involved. He's taking those goal line touches. He is so electric through the receiving. I mean, for him to have 7 targets, it's just, he's going to be unfair. He's going to get crazy yards. He's going to be so productive. And so he might be a league winner.
Yeah, they were saying they were going to throw it to him more. So I was telling you guys to take his overs in the receiving game, and they set it way too low. I think it was like 22, and I thought that was too low. And he got 76 yards. So definitely keep taking his overs in the receiving game. It looks like he's going to be a big part of that offense in the receiving game. And then 2 other takeaways, real quick. Christian Kirk, 1 catch for 30 yards. Evan Ingram, 1 catch for 5 yards. Those two were literally the bread and butter of the offense last year. The offense ran through those two. So it's pretty interesting to see that Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, the new guys with very little chemistry with Trevor, were the focal points. So that is very scary. I am hesitant, very hesitant to start Kirk and Ingram in fantasy right now. We both have Ingram in our co-manager league. I'm planning on throwing a lot of money at Isaiah Likely because 1 catch for 5 yards. I mean, that just is week losing. We lost the week really because of it. So it's scary stuff. Don't love to see that, and I'm being very, very weary about those two.
Yeah, I am as well. I think you just said that perfectly. From what we saw at the end of last season to all of a sudden this first game, it is something to panic about. I mean, really I mean, in a game where, it kind of became that shootout in the third and fourth quarter of you need to get points. Dolphins were just had all this momentum. You need to pass the ball, you need to get first downs, and your tight end was nowhere to be found. So I think that's a good takeaway. If you have him, like we said, throw that fab over at Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, absolutely. Just anyone with an iffy tight end situation, just throw that money at Isaiah Likely. It will be worth it. I guess we can move on to the next game. I don't really want to talk about this next game too much. It was a very ugly football game, but we will go on to the Tennessee Titans, who went into Chicago and lost to the Bears 24-17. The Titans had a chance. No clue how the Bears won with Caleb only throwing for 93 yards, 0 touchdowns, but they got it done. Obviously, that defense is a great, great defense. The special teams is great. Eberflus doing a great, great job with that unit. But offensively, it looked very anemic, very scary. DJ Moore only got 5 catches for 36 yards and 8 targets. It was, a fine outing, but nothing to get you excited. Keenan Allen, 4 catches, 29 yards, and Romo Dunze only 1 catch and gets hurt. And, he has an MCL sprain, I believe. So he may miss some time, which is unfortunate. Maybe it pushes Keenan and DJ Moore up rankings a little bit. No one I'm really targeting in that receiving room other than those two. And then I do think DeAndre Swift is a faller. He only has 30 yards on the ground, wasn't used in the receiving game, only 1 target, 0 catches. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a split, especially with just how bad this offense has looked. Maybe it's going to take more time than we all thought for this Bears offense to click. Hopefully it was just a first game thing, but Caleb Williams will need to play a lot better football to, make this team fantasy relevant. You're not going to want to start Caleb Williams in fantasy either. So that was someone that I think we were ranking too high in fantasy. You're just going to want to temper expectations with this Bears team, really, in general, other than DJ Moore. And I guess you can start Keenan with Romo Dunze out. Obviously, he would be pushed up. For the Titans, very rough as well. Will Levis did not look like the guy that we thought he could be. 2 picks. Obviously, that game losing pick was one of the worst picks I've seen. Looked like a college pick. It just was not an NFL worthy play. It was a very, very bad play to lose the game for your team. Tony Pollard is the workhorse in this backfield, so you love to see that. He gets that long touchdown, 82 yards on the ground, also 3 catches as well. So you do start Pollard. You're excited about that. Tyjae Spears is just a stash right now. And in the receiving game, it's a little bit gross, especially with DeAndre Hopkins kind of playing injured. So he was kind of just a decoy out there. Calvin Ridley only goes 3 for 50, had a long catch, but that's about it. You're not really excited about anyone in really either of these offenses other than DJ Moore.
Yeah, it was a weird game. I mean, the Titans actually looked really good, obviously, as they were up 17-0. Will Levis was playing incredible. And then it was just like, Sam Darnold, he saw ghosts, man. He was seeing ghosts out there, and Caleb Williams didn't even have to do anything. I mean, the defense took over. The Jonathan Owens blocked punt, scoop and score was obviously a big, big momentum changer. I mean, it all went bad for the Titans. There's like nothing could go right. Um, and Will Levis, yeah, it was the choke of the century. I mean, they had the game wrapped up in their bag. Their defense was actually playing pretty well. I mean, it kept Caleb Williams to really nothing. I mean, Caleb could not do anything. Caleb, obviously it's his first game in the NFL. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, sacked twice, 93 total yards through the air, 15 on the ground. But I think Caleb, my biggest takeaway with Caleb Williams in this is I think he was just trying to do too much. I think he was trying to play Pac-12 football where he can outrun these defensive ends, where he's, substantially faster and more athletic than the competition he's playing. And I think it will come with time. I'm not panicking on Caleb Williams to be a bad quarterback. I think it's just, you know, this is a different level. These defensive ends are running 4 4s, to where your Pac-12 defensive ends are running 5 1s. And so it's a different game out there. The contain is different. And it's going to take some time for him to get used to because he's got to transform into a little bit different brand of football. We saw what he could do in preseason, against a little bit lower level of competition. He's just got to take that next step up. And I'm excited to see his next few games. Keenan Allen, obviously, with 11 targets, only coming down with 4 of them. I think Caleb did look his way. So DJ Moore, Keenan are interesting. I think those are the only 2 starts. And then Tony Pollard was not bad. He obviously took over a little bit from. I mean, he's the bell cow of this offense. Obviously, you look at the stats: 16 carries to 8 for 82 yards compared to Tajay Spears' 4 carries, and he got a little through the air, 4 targets for 3 receptions. He found his way in the end zone. So Tony Pollard is also somebody who I think is a good flex play.
Yeah, and like you said, there's no one that we're targeting on the waiver wire for these 2 teams. My question for you before we move on is, are you benching DeAndre Swift then? Are you still starting him just for a decent semblance of a workload, or what are you feeling about him?
I I think I'm going to bench him. I don't think I feel confident in the Chicago Bears run game yet. I think I need to see a good week. I mean, I don't think he gets enough volume. I think he didn't really. I mean, he got a single target, through the air, and that's kind of where you're hoping DeAndre Swift makes his monies on screens and everything. So, I mean, week 1 he was pretty anemic. I don't think I'm starting him next week until he shows that he is startable.
Yeah, I would say he's a very, very low end RB2, maybe even just a bench at this point until you see something, until you see some more usage from him. But with that, let's move on to the next game that we're going to talk about. A very interesting, surprising outcome in this one. I would not have predicted this outcome in a million years. I don't think anyone could say that they did. But the Patriots go into Cincinnati, beat the Bengals wearing their new all orange uniforms 16-10. Jacoby Brissett looked really solid. He, did his thing. But my takeaway here is Ramondre Stevenson one of the most underrated players in the NFL, one of the best running backs, honestly, in the NFL at this point. 25 carries, 120 yards, one touchdown, and 3 catches as well through the air. So he had a great fantasy performance, just a great performance in general. He's the reason they won this game. He was just relentless, kept getting those first downs, kept churning those, chunk yardage plays. He was just a very, very awesome football player in this one. So you love to see that. The Patriots defense played great. Christian Gonzalez, Jonathan Jones did awesome on Jamar Chase. That really limited him until the end of the game. So yeah, you really just love to see that from the Patriots. Everyone was counting them out, saying they were the worst team in the NFL. They were the favorites to get the #1 overall pick. So very great statement win for Gerard Mayo in his first game. Going on to the Bengals, not positive for the Bengals. I guess a big takeaway is Zach Moss is the workhorse in this running game. It looked like Chase Brown could be. Yeah, for some reason, watching this game, it looked like Chase Brown was in a lot at the beginning, but it really was all Zach Moss. He had 9 carries compared to Brown's 3. Moss had 44 yards on the ground and a touchdown compared to Brown only having 11 on the ground. So definitely, Zach Moss, I think, is a start moving forward, especially this week. They play the Chiefs. They're going to be in a high scoring game. So you're going to target the Bengals players, target the Chiefs players. So I'm not too worried about Jamar Chase. 6 for 62. He really turned it on at the end of the game. Obviously, that'll get better. That connection will get better. He's been holding out, so he, wasn't fully fit and in shape and ready for this one. Um, it was interesting that Zach Moss got more targets than Chase Brown as well. So yeah, Zach Moss really is that guy in this backfield that you want to start. T. Higgins should be coming back hopefully this week. I always just got those hamstring injuries. It's such a frustrating ride with T. Higgins if you drafted him. I didn't personally. Actually, we have him in our co-manager league. I can't even say that. That's just, yeah, it's a really tough, rough ride with him. He's always got those hammies. But yeah, hopefully he can come back against the Chiefs, and hopefully this offense can just be a lot more high scoring.
Yeah, in our co-manager league, we definitely had some disappointing players on that team, including Keenan, or not Keenan Allen, excuse me, T. Higgins, DJ Moore. It was,
Marvin.
yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. It was we had a rough week, let's just say that. I had a rough week overall in fantasy. But to get into this game, this is a week 1 game. I think this, I hate to say it, but I feel like it's a little fluky. I don't feel like this was an accurate representation of the Bengals. I think, the Bengals kind of came out here half asleep, Jamar Chase holding out, T. Higgins not in. It felt like the Bengals had no identity. It felt like they came into this game half asleep. Felt like they thought it'd be a cakewalk even without, Jamar Chase practicing and T. Higgins out. So it just kind of felt like they fell asleep at the wall and just had no identity. I didn't see any identity to the Bengals. I couldn't figure out what they were good at in this game. I couldn't figure out what they could rely on because not any phase of the game was working for them. And the Patriots, they came out here and, Gerard Mayo kind of reminded me, he's that player's coach. He's kind of like that Antonio Pierce. And he had these guys fired up, ready to play for him. And I mean, they really established the run game. Their defense was playing lights out. Christian Gonzalez is that dude. So I just, it's weird. It is a week 1 game. I don't know how much stock I'm buying into this game. Historically, I don't feel like the Bengals really ever start out very good. I feel like there's, the past previous years, I don't know. I feel like they've started out 0-1, 0-2 the past couple of years, and they really make that resurgence. So I'm not taking too much stock into this game, but I will say, hell of a game plan from Gerard Mayo. Came out there ready to fight, ready to punch the Bengals in the mouth, and that's what they did. And, from a fantasy aspect, only Ramondre Stevenson's the only rosterable player, and he's a damn good one for the Patriots. And then, yeah, I mean, the Bengals, you're hoping, Jamar Chase figures it out. And yeah, Zach Moss, me and Dan were kind of preaching all offseason. He's going to be the RB1. I know no one was for sure, whether it be him or Chase Brown, but if you listen to us, you would have known it was always Zach Moss.
Yeah, we knew that Zach Moss would take over that Joe Mixon role, and he does fall into the end zone, just like we think he's going to do a lot of this year. And yeah, for the Bengals, only takeaway is Andre Yosevas. I do think he could be definitely a roster hold for sure. No one else I'm really targeting waiver wire wise on the Bengals. And then for the Patriots, it's just really spread out for those receivers. I'm personally holding Jalen Polk in a few leagues just because I'm holding on to hope that him and Drake May could have a really good connection down the line here, but obviously a very underwhelming first game for him. And there's just a lot of, targets being spread around there. So you're really just starting Ramondre, who is an awesome start, like you said. Moving on to the next game, we'll talk about one that I don't even want to talk about. Really gross, and I feel so terrible for Giants fans. Like, imagine getting excited for the home opener, buying tickets to go and watch your team play, and the Vikings with Sam Darnold coming down and beat you 28-6, just completely beat down on the Giants. Daniel Jones, 2 interceptions, just a shit fest from Daniel Jones. It really was just terrible performance. I was pounding the table for them to take JJ McCarthy in the draft, and I still am gonna stand on that because Malik Neighbors, he's an awesome football player. He's an absolutely crazy receiver. He's an Odell Beckham Jr. regen to me, but a pretty underwhelming fantasy performance. This is kind of how I think it's going to be for him every single week. 5 for 66, no touchdowns, just because it's Daniel
He doesn't
Jones.
have anyone throwing to him. It's plain and simple. Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. You know, they paid him a bag. They feel like they're handcuffed to him. But put in Drew Lock, put in Danny DeVito. I don't care. Daniel Jones is just terrible. And I mean, I don't know what that guy's looking at. I don't know what he's doing. That 17.4 QBR is probably too high. In my opinion, it probably should have been like a negative 17.4. But yeah, it's brutal. And from a fantasy aspect for the Giants, I really don't want anything to do with it. I think Malik Neighbors is obviously playable because I think he will, outperform what he should be doing just because he's an incredible receiver. And you're just hoping that he gets enough targets to find his way in the end zone and break a long one, which he will do inevitably because he is just an incredible player. But anyone else, I don't think I'm comfortable starting Devin Singletary. I don't think I want any stock in any of their running backs anymore. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson with 12 targets is intriguing. Obviously, only coming down with half of them. I think he's worth a roster spot. I don't think I'd quite start him yet. And then on the Vikings side of the ball, you know, Jordan Addison obviously gets hurt with an injury. So I think that's going to obviously, I think they're going to start hyper targeting Jettis even more. I think Jettis was very underused in this game, but he still found his way into the end zone, still had some good, receptions, getting 4 for 59, 44 as his long, and then a touchdown. So, he was okay in this game. Still a little bit worrisome just on that target share. And then Aaron Jones was a good play this week. He found his way into the end zone. He is the bell cow of that running back room. And, one thing I am disappointed with a little bit of Aaron Jones is usually I'd like to see a little bit more than 2 targets, but kind of felt like, they kind of took this game away and, they stopped, really airing it out.
Yeah, Sam Darnold had a damn near flawless performance. So shout out to Sam Darnold. He had one of the best quarterbacking performances of the week. There were some really bad ones, and he was great this week. So shout out to Sam Darnold. He will make this team competent and competitive in most games with this defense. Aaron Jones, like you said, he's gonna be a start every single week just because he probably will fall into the end zone more often than not. And yeah, like you said, I think just the outcome of this Jordan Addison injury, he probably will miss a few weeks, is just Justin Jefferson will take all those targets. I'm not targeting like a Jalen Naylor, really anyone off the waiver wire. It's just all going to go to Justin Jefferson. So move him up your rankings, and that's about it for the Vikings. No one I'm targeting. You're just starting Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, Sam Darnold, and maybe a super flex league. But yeah, for the Giants, it's just not exciting. You took Malik Neighbors, round 3, and he's just not going to outpay that value in this offense. It's just impossible unless he just can't. This offense is just too anemic. It's sad. And like you said, Wan'Dale Robinson can be rostered, but you're just not starting him or Devin Singletary at all. You're just not excited about that team. It's bad.
Yeah, 100%, think we can move off of this game. A little bit depressing for Giants fans. Hopefully it gets better next week. It was pretty brutal though this week, and you're hoping it's week 1. And great transition, Dan. I'll let you take this one
Yeah,
away.
speaking of brutal and depressing, sorry, Panthers fans, you can turn off of this one, our favorite people, Panthers fans. But the Panthers go into New Orleans and lose to the Saints 47-10. Just a terrible, terrible, terrible outing. Bryce Young, man, I am one of the biggest Bryce Young people, but it's starting to lose faith,
Oh,
starting to lose hope. It's holding on by a string at this point. Two really bad interceptions, 13 for 30 in this game. I know it's against the Saints. They have a good defense, but come on, you're playing division rivals. You've got to play better than this. They bring in Dave Canales and a lot of weapons this offseason. Gotta play better than that. They made the Saints look like prime Drew Brees and Sean Payton Saints, and they were just dominant. Derek Carr was feeling himself, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, pointing to JC Horn saying, I have 3 touchdowns on your head. Just crazy stuff. Nothing we would have ever expected in this game. Alvin Kamara was a smash play. He was one of the best players in fantasy this week. So you love to see that. Somehow in this great performance, Chris Olave only had 2 catches for 11 yards. So you don't love to see that. That's very concerning, actually. I'm a little bit scared for Chris Olave. I was starting to fade him in all my drafts just because of this offense in general. So that is something you need to monitor. It's a little bit scary with Olave, but Kamara's a smash play as long as Derek Carr, check down Princess Carr's out there. He's going to be throwing to Alvin Kamara. Rashid Shaheed's obviously just that dart throw for a long touchdown every week. And then for the Cardinals, Miles Sanders somehow outproduces Chuba Hubbard on the ground. You're not starting any of those running backs. Adam Thielen has a pretty, decent day, but you're really not starting anyone because Deontay Johnson goes 2 for 19. So I think you got to make him prove it to you before you start him. So in this whole roster, between the two rosters, I'm only starting Kamara and Kamara and Olave, and I'm pretty scared about Olave. And I think that's it. Maybe Juwan Johnson who gets a touchdown, but man, it's rough.
so on to the next game. But oh
Yeah.
man, um, every hot take I made, everything I said, all the fun I had with the Panthers, predicting them to win, man. Um, I want to walk out of this podcast right now, man, because I'm feeling embarrassed. I want to cry. I feel depressed. I'm sad. I mean, we spent $100 million on the interior of our offensive line. We go and draft a rookie, wide receiver, borderline round one, round two. Um, we go out and get Deontay Johnson. It's just it's it's depressing, man. It's depressing how this, Bryce Young, very underwhelming, looked terrible, looked awful. I mean, he looked like the worst quarterback in the NFL. Um, and this team was just so bad. And you gave Derek Carr confidence. You let Derek Carr, put three on your head, JC Horn. And it's just, I mean, Derek Carr in 2024 is not a good quarterback, and they put up 47 points. I mean, it's just brutal, depressing. I don't even want to talk about it. Alvin Kamara is an absolute stud. He looked like 2017 Alvin Kamara. He's gonna be a fantasy monster this season. So if you got him, congratulations. It's gonna look like this most weeks because he's just gonna eat. And Raheem Shaheed, man, he's just a dope football player. He's I don't I'm a little scared to start him in a fantasy aspect, but he's definitely worth a roster spot. And I mean, this guy gets behind coverage a lot. I mean, he's a fast football player. He's dope. He's one of the most swaggy football players. I really like him, but I don't know if I'm quite there to start him yet.
Yeah, definitely someone you roster and you can throw that dart at in a 2 flex league. But yeah, like you said it perfectly. Kamara was 2017 Kamara. Derek Carr saw the Spencer Rattler tweets, the Spencer Rattler chants, and he was 2016 Derek Carr. Crazy, crazy stuff. Just a wild game, honestly. No one expected it. Let's just move off of this game for Panthers fans' sakes. I almost feel bad at this point. For Panthers fans, it's just so rough. Got to get better than that. But let's move on to the afternoon slate. Raiders go into LA, lose to your Chargers. The Chargers look super solid after the little bit of a slow start in this game. They definitely handled this game and took care of business. So I'll let you talk about this one.
It felt like a Chargers game that I've never ever seen before because, I think they won in almost every single phase, other than the passing game. I mean, the special teams looked incredible, something I've never used to. Defense was awesome. The run game was incredible. And, J.K. Dobbins, and we had an identity, in the offensive run game. So, I mean, the defensive run game, the offensive run game, something as Charger fans we're not used to. It was a battle, for the line of scrimmage. It was nitty gritty. Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, I mean, Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson. I mean, it was a dirty game. People were going at it. There was pushing. I mean, it was a classic Chargers Raiders game. It was no one liked each other out there. There was pushes and punches, almost every play after the whistle. It was just a physical game between Antonio Pierce and Jim Harbaugh. And, Chargers went out there and they played a Jim Harbaugh type of game. They outlasted, they outperformed, they outmuscled, Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins. Joe Alt was just a stud. He, in 10 true pass rushing snaps against Max Crosby in the most ferocious, vicious defensive end, a guy who's relentless. He gave up zero pressure. So, this Chargers identity has changed. It's exciting. And from a fantasy aspect, Justin Herbert looks like he's going to be pretty anemic. He's just got to go out there and not make mistakes and, make the throws when he needs to. And that's exactly what he did. But J.K. Dobbins, man, had himself a game. 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. It was kind of, obviously you look on the stats there and Gus Edwards out carried him, but they ended up riding with J.K. Dobbins, who was the hot hand at the end of the game. I think he's going to be very fantasy relevant. And then, from the receivers, all pretty terrible except Lad McConkey. Josh Palmer was not existent. Quentin Johnston got a underneath, catch that he ended up getting 20-ish yards on, but that was really it from him. He was getting targeted a lot. He had a couple of drops. But Lad McConkey, I think you're going to see, really grow into something special. I think he's going to turn into that number one target. He was the leading target holder in that game and found his way into the end zone. So from a fantasy aspect, J.K. Dobbins, Lad McConkey. And then on the other side of the ball, the Raiders offense was just a little underwhelming, only putting up 10 points. Devontae Adams was pretty quiet. Usually he has a big game against the Chargers. He was kind of shut down for the most part. But a guy who I am super excited for is Brock Bowers. You look over there, 8 targets, 6 receptions for 58 yards, one of the better fantasy tight end performances. And I think he's only going to get better. He's something special. He's going to be open in the middle of the field. And so, he's almost worth a trade target in the leagues because he didn't have a crazy game, but I think it's just going to go up from here for Brock Bowers.
Yeah, you said that perfectly. I'll go with the Raiders real quick. I do think Brock Bowers could be a trade for target because there's no tight ends right now. So the fact that he does that in his first career game, that could be, something that's very valuable with the market of tight ends right now. So I do like that. I was fading Devontae Adams into oblivion, and he proved exactly why this offense is just way too anemic. He's going to need, a crazier amount of volume than that. That's a pretty disappointing amount of volume, honestly. So not happy with Devontae Adams. I would say I'm trading him away if I could. I definitely didn't draft him in any leagues, though, thankfully. The craziest thing is Zamir White, you cannot start, but I never thought in a million years that I'd be staying this, but you got to target Alexander Madison in waivers. I think he's the running back that you want in this backfield because of the 4 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown through the air. I think Alexander Madison, as gross as it sounds, is the running back that I'm rostering here, which is just crazy to even say. And then, yeah, moving on to the Chargers. In the receiving game, I didn't think Lad McConkey would be the number one target getter this early. We both were really targeting him in drafts, and that is beautiful to see that this is already giving us that return. Lad McConkey is a borderline flex start for me in 2 flex leagues now, that he is the wide receiver 1 with Justin Herbert. They already have that connection, that touchdown in their first game. Super exciting, honestly, for that aspect. Super disappointing is Joshua Palmer obviously gets ejected, but he just wasn't looking great in this game. So Joshua Palmer, someone I'm staying away from, maybe even dropping. And then, yeah, I'll hold my hand up. I was completely wrong about J.K. Dobbins versus Gus Edwards. I thought Gus Edwards was going to be the guy. I really thought too heavily into the contract, apparently, and I definitely did not have J.K. Dobbins breaking away for a 61-yard run on my bingo card. I did not expect that elusiveness, that speed, that breakaway speed from J.K. Dobbins. So respect to him. I would say he is a start for now. You're going to ride the hot hand like they did at the end of the game. You're just going to ride J.K. Dobbins, in my opinion, in fantasy as well. So that's really the takeaways from this game. I don't think there's anyone that you're really targeting. It's just you're starting Lad McConkey and J.K. Dobbins if you're in a two flex league, in my opinion. Justin Herbert, I'm not really looking to start unless I'm in a super flex league. And then I think Alexander Madison's the guy to have in that Raiders backfield, and Devontae Adams, I don't love, but Brock Bowers could be a trade for target at tight end.
I'm just gonna say it again. I think I'm gonna be heavily targeting a trade towards Brock Bowers because I think this offense, I think he will, fastly become the focal point of this offense. He was the target leader, and I think he's just gonna eat across the middle of the field. And given the quarterback situation, I think it just really tailors to Brock Bowers over a Devontae Adams, over a Jacoby Myers. So I'm just really, really excited for Brock Bowers.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy to think about that he out targeted Devontae Adams in his first career NFL game. So you do really love to see that usage with Brock Bowers. Go trade for him in your leagues if you can, if it's not too late. But with that, let's go on to the next game. One game that I'm kind of dreading to talk about. I'm not excited to get into this one. The Broncos game. They go into Seattle, lose to the Seahawks 20-26. I was at this game. It was fun at the beginning. The Broncos looked very, very good at the beginning. The defense was lights out, really, had that Seahawks offense struggling. But man, that Broncos offense, it was truly one of the worst offensive performances I've ever seen in my life. I think this is the one team where you cannot start one person. Even in a two flex league, you can't start one person on the Broncos in fantasy. It's just so bad. Jaleel McLaughlin out carrying Javonte Williams, both of them not doing absolutely anything. Bo Nix being the best, runner of the football on this team. The receiving game, Cortland Sutton was just, I don't want to like pile on him, but he was just a joke. He was a pathetic joke. The drop that he had over the middle was just bad. He had a very bad football game. Josh Reynolds, Devon Bailey being your main guys, Bailey getting 8 catches, really all just dump offs. It's pretty crazy stuff, honestly. It was just really, really rough for the Broncos right now. I think Jaleel McLaughlin could be a roster hold, and Javante, you kind of have to hold. Sutton, you kind of have to hold. But other than that, not targeting anyone, maybe Bailey in a PPR league that you're desperate for. But yeah, enough talking about the Broncos. Bo Nix had a really rough first game, 2 picks. It was just, a tough environment to play in your first game against Mike McDonald. Definitely going to hold the jury out. Hopefully, you can be better against the Steelers in the home opener this next week. Hopefully he's more comfortable and just plays more confident, because it was a bad football game. The play calling wasn't even great. It was very conservative and a little bit scared, honestly. And for the Seahawks, they got off to a really, really slow start. Gino threw that pick at the very first drive. After that, actually they had like a few safeties as well. The offense really did start really slow, but once they figured out that the Broncos' weakness was the run defense and Kenneth Walker just absolutely took this game over, that's when the game just was over. They just handed it off to Kenneth Walker, and he took them, to the promised land. He won this game for them on the ground. 20 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. He was awesome. Also, had 2 catches in the air. So he is an awesome start in fantasy. Obviously, he was an awesome draft pick, and he really won the game, really, because DK Metcalf got completely shut down. He was shadowed by Patrick Surtain, and we were scared to start DK Metcalf in general this week because of that. And he only had 3 catches for 29 yards. Tyler Lockett really won this game for the Seahawks in the end. He had the game-winning third down conversion, had a few really huge conversions. So I think Tyler Lockett actually surprised me in this one. Jackson Smith and Jigba was a big disappointment. But I think that's about all the takeaways. A little bit depressing as a Bronco fan. The offense was so bad, but it was a good game.
Dan, I think you did more than Cortland Sutton. I think you forced a muff punt. If I'm, or what?
I did actually. I swear the silent was, or the stadium was absolutely silent, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, and the Seahawks muffed a punt. It was pretty hilarious. I think it was me.
Yeah. It's Dan out here putting in the work for the team. Facing that, notorious, 12th man stadium, out there. It's, inspirational stuff. Going to Seattle, probably a fun trip for you. Probably some gas food, I'm guessing. So, it wasn't all bad of a trip. I'm sure the coffee was insane. I'm sure the munch was just out of this world in Seattle. So, there's some highlights to the trip. But yeah, what a tough game for Bo Nix. Go into one of the most hostile environments in football in your first start ever. And your weapons are not that great. You're a little bit outmatched in this game. So, it did not look good for Bo Nix, but I don't feel like the Broncos did much to help him. I think there was, some critical errors, some critical mistakes. I think the defense did good. I've never seen two safeties in like one quarter, ever. That was kind of unique and cool. But yeah, I think the Seahawks, in their stadium, with that 12th man, with a Mike McDonald, defense was just a little too much for Bo Nix first game. And yeah, like you said, once they figured out, they could expose the Broncos run defense, Kenneth Walker really took over. He did leave with an abdominal injury. Have you heard any? I haven't heard anything else about it.
He said after the game that he was fine, so I'm not too worried about it. I haven't really heard much after that, so I think he'll be fine this week.
Okay, but yeah, from a fantasy aspect, Kenneth Walker is going to be really good. I think you can see a nice bounce back week from DK Metcalf next week when he's not being guarded by Pat Surtain. So I think he's going to be a must start, obviously, going forward. You drafted him to start. And then yeah, from the Broncos side, I don't know if I really want to start anyone just till I see another week of Broncos football.
And DK Metcalf is going up against Christian Gonzalez this week, so that's a little bit
Ooh.
scary. He could get shut down twice in a row.
Yeah, that's a little iffy. I'm a little scared on that. But yeah, I do want to see from a Broncos side of things. I don't think I can confidently start anyone just till I see one more week.
Yeah, you're not starting anyone on the Broncos. As sad as that sounds, it might be the one team in the NFL that is the case. But yeah, Kenneth Walker, smash play, great game out of him. So with that, let's go on to the next game. A very great game, a surprising game. Honestly, I picked the Browns, and I did not expect the Cowboys to go into Cleveland and beat them 33-17. So hats off to Dak Prescott after getting that contract right before the game. CeeDee Lamb, 5 catches, 61 yards on 10 targets. No touchdown for him, but just a very solid game for CD. He's always going to be solid. And obviously, once he gets that touchdown, he's going to be a great play. In fantasy, he's probably worthy of being the first overall pick like he was in a lot of drafts. So, yeah, very great stuff from the Cowboys. That defense was stout. Zeke gets the touchdown. I kind of want him to go on to the Browns though, because Deshaun Watson, man, he is so rusty, so bad. He looked absolutely terrible. 2 picks. He was seeing ghosts, just inaccurate, 24 for 45, just bad football from Deshaun Watson. So don't know what's going to go on with him, man, but it's a complete mess. And Deshaun Watson's looking like one of the worst trades in NFL history. It looks like it can't even be salvaged at this point. It looks like he just can't even. I would just put Jameis Winston in at this point because I don't think there's any fixing with him. It looks like he's just lost it, which is crazy to say with how good he once was. But Jerome Ford, smash play. He's gonna be great. We were both really high on him in fantasy drafts, and you definitely want to start him while Nick Chubb is out because he's gonna get a lot of volume even in a bad matchup like this. A little bit disappointing. Amari Cooper only had 2 catches for 16 on 9 targets in a revenge game against his old team. So very disappointing from Amari Cooper. You don't like that at all. You kind of have to start him, but you're not excited about it as long as Deshaun Watson's out there. David Njoku gets hurt, so that's a little bit unfortunate. He should be out a few weeks. But yeah, I mean, not really too many takeaways. The Cowboys just kind of dominated this one.
Yeah, it was just a complete, utter domination. Probably our Michael Myers bloody murder game of the week, other than, a couple garbage time touchdowns. But yeah, the takeaway from this game is Deshaun Watson sucks at football in 2024, and I don't know if there's any recovering. The team around him, the defense is great. The weapons are great. Jerome Ford is a fantastic running back, even, without Nick Chubb in there. So there's really no excuses. I think Deshaun Watson is just cooked, sadly. And like you said, it is a little disappointing because he has just utterly complete lost it. I mean, from what we saw from Texans Deshaun Watson, excuse me, was just an incredible, ascending, awesome player. And it's just we have not seen that. And like you said, I think it's you have 3 good quarterbacks honestly behind Deshaun Watson. I think you have 3 quarterbacks behind oh, excuse me, Tyler Huntley is no longer on the team. So you have 2 quarterbacks that are a lot more capable, of playing better football than Deshaun Watson at this point. I think, like you said, you put in Jameis. I think Dorian Thompson Robinson's better than Deshaun Watson at this point.
Yeah, it was just pathetic stuff, and I don't really, like I said, see too many, too much salvageable issues with Deshaun Watson. It looks just finished, really. It's really scary for the Browns' outlook on the season. Kind of outlier plays, Jerry Judy and Brandon Cooks. If you need to start them, you can, but they're really just kind of, bench players right now. Rico Dowdle disappointed because he didn't really have any receiving game work, but any other takeaways in this one? I think it's kind of straightforward, and Deshaun is the biggest takeaway in this one.
Do we know how long is Jake Ferguson out for?
That we don't know, but he will be missing some time, so that's unfortunate. Definitely, Jake Ferguson owners go target Isaiah Likely and in your waivers, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think moral of the story is target Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, for
And
just about anyone.
yeah, I think you take away from this is just please but go put some fab on Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, the only takeaway this whole episode really is go get Isaiah Likely. But we'll go on to the last afternoon game. The Commanders went into Tampa and lost to the Buccaneers 37-20. That Buccaneers offense looked really fun for fantasy. Mike Evans has a great game, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches for 61 yards. Godwin has a great game for 8 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown as well. So very, very solid from those top 2 receivers. Rashad White gets six catches, 75 yards in the air. Kind of disappoints on the ground for 31 yards on the ground and 15 carries. Bucky Irving gets 62 yards on the ground. So Bucky Irving is actually an interesting hold for the bench right now. I don't think he should be on your waivers. Baker Mayfield is honestly kind of just a start, especially in matchups like these where you know that they're just going to be throwing it up, getting a lot of touchdowns with Mike Evans and Godwin. So I think Baker Mayfield could even be like a target. I would definitely, ride the hot hand with him. He finished the season really hot in fantasy last year. So I do like this Bucks offense in fantasy. It's pretty fun. Jalen McMillan gets that 1 catch for a touchdown. He's a fun bench hold. But yeah, that's kind of it for the Bucks. And then for the Redskins, it's really just Jaden Daniels, man. He gets the 2 rushing touchdowns, 88 yards on the ground. He is their rushing game. He is their guy in the run game. He didn't really look too great in the passing game. Really scary for Terry McLaurin, honestly, because he's just going to dump it down to Eckler and Brian Robinson, as we saw. So it is scary time for Scary Terry. I don't know if I'm starting him at this point until proven otherwise, but you have to start Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels, with that rushing ability, is definitely a must start every single week just because he's going to be, either 16, carries, he ends up going for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's a must start. But yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield, man, I think Baker Mayfield is a good stash, if you want to stash another quarterback on your team, depending on what it is. But Baker Mayfield will have these big games, where he throws 3, 4 touchdowns, and he does it quite often, without much people talking about it. But Baker Mayfield was very dialed. He was very locked into this game. I mean, 24 of 30, 289 and 4 touchdowns, and going even getting a little bit of rushing for Baker too, with 3 carries for 21 yards. He was an absolute stud this week, one of the better studs of the week. So I think, depending on how your quarterback situation works in a super flex, you're definitely starting Baker Mayfield. But yeah, I mean, they went out there and they dominated this game. And obviously, it's a welcome to the NFL for Jaden Daniels, a little bit tough. But yeah, very underwhelming from Terry McLaurin, Diamond Brown, not existent. Austin Eckler being the leading receiver. I mean, I don't know if that's a big surprise, there just because of, the checkdowns and everything. And he is a veteran presence out there. But I mean, Brian Robinson, looked pretty good. Obviously, he was the second leading receiver on this team, 3 for 49. But he also found his way into the end zone and, was obviously the clear RB1 on this team. So he's obviously a good start going forward. He was a good, late round pick. I think he's going to pay off his value tremendously. But yeah, on the Buccaneer side of things, you know what you're doing with Rashad White, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. They are all starts, and Baker Mayfield, is probably honestly a start going forward for most leagues.
Yeah, you're targeting the Bucks in fantasy. You're just, kind of starting all those guys. You're riding the hot hand for that Buccaneers team. And yeah, for Washington, you pointed it out, Diami Brown, very disappointing. I expected a lot more from him. So he is just absolutely nothing for this team, apparently. And we did predict Brian Robinson to be the guy in that backfield, be the guy that you target. And he looks like a pretty solid start, actually. So love to see that. Let's go on to the Sunday night football game. Very good game. The Rams went into Detroit, lost to the Lions 26-20, but man, the Rams had a lot of injuries in this one. Steve Avila, Puka Nakua go down. Looks like they'll be out for weeks, which is super unfortunate, but they played great. Sean McVay is just an awesome, awesome coach. I guess we can get into the Rams because Puka's out. So for Puka owners, it's very, kind of tough. It's disastrous, really, that you lose him week one. But I think you might want to target like a Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson. They both get 7 targets each, both do pretty well with those targets. And then the league winner is Cooper Kupp at this point. He gets 21 targets, his career high, 14 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. 21 targets is just crazy. Cooper Kupp is going to be the league winner in fantasy until Puka's back. It's pretty incredible. Him and Stafford just have a perfect connection, and it's pretty beautiful stuff, honestly. Kupp had a great game. Kyron Williams had 90% of, just touches in that backfield. So you love to see that. He is the workhorse for the Rams. Blake Corum doesn't even get a touch, which is crazy. And then shout out to the Lions. They took care of business. It wasn't the prettiest. It was a little bit unconventional. David Montgomery had a great game. Jahmyr Gibbs also got his. They both did really well. But Jameson Williams was the guy carrying them through the air, not Laporta and not St. Brown, who had a really bad game. I'm not, panicking about St. Brown. I think he'll be just fine. But it is very rare to see Jameson Williams going 5 for 121 and a touchdown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown going 3 for 13. So very interesting game for the Lions.
Yeah, very, off schedule game is what I should say. Is yeah, weird. And looks like we're back to the same stuff last year for that David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, pretty much even split. I think David Montgomery is going to carry a little bit more of that workhorse through the ground, while Jahmyr Gibbs, which maybe is not even a bad thing for Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe it makes his touches a little bit more valuable. He's getting put in, a little bit more schemed up, better run situations, but he is going to be, getting those 6 targets, 4 receptions, 34 yards. He should start really picking up through the air, and that's kind of what his role is. Kind of reminds me of the, 2018, 2019, or sorry, yeah, like more like 2017, 2018 Chargers with, that Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler 1-2 punch, where both of them were both like almost top 10 fantasy players. So I'm feeling confident. I don't care if they're splitting. They're both going to be very relevant. They both find their way into the end zone. But yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the most safe, felt like one of the most locked for safe players, going in the top, 5 of most people's fantasy drafts. And, obviously a disappointing showing from him, but it was fun to see Jameson Williams, a very promising high draft pick finally show up for this team. And then, like you said, for the Rams, congratulations again, Cooper Kupp owners. Um, he's a league winner, and I kind of had that suspicion. I didn't realize Puka would go down week one, but I mean, this could be triple crown Cooper Kupp if we're gonna be seeing 21 targets in a game. I mean, 14 for 110 and a touchdown. Even got 2 carries for 10 yards. Yeah, this is league winning type stuff.
Crazy, ridiculous usage from him. And like I said, target Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson in waivers, but also Kobe Parkinson. I know people are down bad at tight end, so put as your backup option to Isaiah Likely. Put Colby Parkinson as that backup option because I think he'll be solid in this offense, especially with no Puka, 4 for 47 on 5 targets. I do think Colby Parkinson's a very good sleeper that your league won't be thinking about as a backup option for Isaiah Likely in waivers. And then, yeah, for the Lions, David Montgomery, I was targeting him as my RB2 in a lot of drafts. I love him. I loved his value. He's going to be great. You start him every week. Gibbs, obviously, great. Jameson Williams, I think you're starting Jameson Williams. I would just ride the hot hand. 9 targets for him. There could be a tide changing in that player right there in the usage with Jameson Williams. So I'm excited about that. Obviously, Laporta, Gibbs, St. Brown, I'm not worried about in the receiving game. I think they'll be a lot better moving forward. And then I do think Jared Goff and Stafford will be better as well in fantasy. They weren't really great fantasy wise this week, and I think their starts, I think they'll be pretty solid. Any other takeaways with this game?
No, it was a good rematch, from that playoff game the last year. These two teams really go at it. But yeah, I mean, I just Cooper Cup, man. I'm kicking myself in the knee, punching myself. I'm mad. I'm mad I didn't get him. I can't believe it. And shout out me for, going against Cooper Cup and Saquon Barkley in the same week.
Yeah, crazy luck. But yeah, ridiculous usage for Cooper Cup, 21 targets. I mean, he really is the league winner. The biggest takeaway of that game might be the overtime rules need to change because the game shouldn't just be ending like that. But let's go on to the last game of the week that we will talk about. The Jets go into San Fran and lose to the Niners 32-19 in a pretty solid game. I thought the Jets offense actually looked pretty solid, and the defense will look better against teams that aren't the 49ers. So I am optimistic about both teams, but the Niners really took care of business against a great team, a great defense, and that offense wasn't phased. Jordan Mason wasn't phased. 28 carries, 147 and a touchdown. Pretty crazy stuff. Deebo Samuel was used. They were spamming Deebo Samuel. It felt like watching the game. They were really using him. Brandon Ayuk, like we predicted, wasn't really an impact, only 2 catches for 28, like we predicted, just because he's been holding out for so long. You don't want to, utilize him too much and get him injured. The holdout hammy is a real thing, so that he wasn't really fit for this game, but they got the job done pretty easily. This team is just dominant. They're going to be dominant every single week, every single year, even without Christian McCaffrey, who was a surprise, out. A surprise inactive before this game. So this Niners team is going to be rolling all year. It's the same Niners team as we saw. And for the Jets, Garrett Wilson looked pretty awesome. It looks like he has a connection with Aaron Rodgers, really close to getting a touchdown, but still a decent week in fantasy. And then Breece Hall is going to be a beast. He is Breece Hall. He's going to absolutely star for your fantasy team as well. No other takeaways because I'm not really targeting anyone on the borderline of these two teams.
Alan Lazard, Dan, with the two tugs today on 9 targets.
I mean, maybe he is a like a roster hold just because Aaron Rodgers is playing, and as long as he's playing, he's gonna love Alan Lazard. But also, he just kind of grosses me out as a football player. But yeah, he got the 2 touchdowns, so I do think he has to be rostered at least.
Yeah, this is definitely a disappointing game. A game where I predicted, I was going to hyping myself up trying to pick the Jets, man. But they did get outclassed. They got outmanned, and that was all without Christian McCaffrey. And Jordan Mason was, the star of this game. 28 carries, 147 yards, and a touchdown. He was dominant, and Brock Purdy played manageable football. The defense, was locked down, shut down. I mean, they played fantastic, and they just kind of outclassed and outmanned. And I don't know. Maybe I'm a little scared of Aaron Rodgers this year. Maybe I am panicking a little bit on the fact of I don't know if he's just toxic. I don't know if he's a toxic locker room guy. I don't know if these guys want to get behind him and really play super hard for him. I thought Breece Hall was pretty awesome, pretty good today. Like you said, I thought Garrett Wilson was pretty solid, but I just don't know if there's a full buy-in. I feel like, if you want a really good team, your quarterback really has to buy in to it. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers really isn't bought into playing football. I feel like he's maybe in a different mind space if he's somewhere else. But and as we know, Aaron Rodgers, is one of the more toxic NFL players. And so, I don't know. I don't know if I'm panicking. I don't know if this is just week one and Aaron Rodgers' first game from a torn ACLs against a really good 49ers team and a really good 49ers defense. But it is a little suspect and a little worrisome for me.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I'm a little bit more optimistic for the Jets, not to have too many excuses, but I do think they looked pretty good against the 49ers, like you said, in his first game back. I do think they can build off of some things. And yeah, moving on to fantasy, it's really, what you're doing. You're starting Breece Hall, you're starting Garrett Wilson. Like you said, you can target Alan Lazard, but remember, Mike Williams didn't really play at all in this one. He's always injured, though. So I do think Alan Lazard is definitely at least a stash. Don't know if you're going to start him yet. And then Jordan Mason, apparently Christian McCaffrey might not even play this Sunday as well. So Jordan Mason's a smash start, obviously, as you see with that usage. You got to start him in fantasy. So go pick him up if he's available in your waivers. And I think that's about it because you know who you're starting on the Niners.
Yeah, you just said that perfectly. But what a week of football, Dan! It was week one.
Yep. It was a crazy week one. It was definitely week one because a lot of crazy, crazy things happened. A lot of unexpected outcomes, a lot of weird, fantasy outcomes, especially happened. But thank you guys for tuning in to another recap episode for the NFL Seekers. Tune into our preview episode here just in a few days before week 2. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out.
Peace.